Welcome everybody. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you all to the first of Kepler's Leaders in Law lecture series for this academic year. The Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research is really delighted that today we are welcoming Stephanie Boyce. Stephanie is the 177th President of the Law Society of England and Wales. She's only the 6th female to hold that office. She's the first Black office holder and first person of colour and only the second in-house solicitor in almost 50 years to be President of the Law Society. Stephanie is going to talk to us this evening about her own career journey and how she got to this position. But by way of a little bit of background, she was admitted as a solicitor in 2002, and she has a wealth of experience in corporate governance, regulatory frameworks, and professional regulation. Her academic credentials are equally as impressive. She holds a Master of Laws in Public Law and Global Governance from King's College at the University of London, and she's a Fellow of the Chartered Governance Institute. She's a council member of the Law Society of England and Wales and represents the Women Lawyers Division, former chair of the Strategic Litigation Group, and as well as being a member of the board of the Law Society, is a solicitor member of the Joint Tribunal Service and holds a number of statutory positions with her local authority as well. Stephanie's recently been appointed as to the HM Treasury and Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Independent Task Force, which has a remit to boost socio-economic diversity at senior levels in the UK finance and professional services industries. I know those are issues close to Stephanie's heart, and I expect she'll be speaking to us a little bit about those this evening as well. Last year, she was voted on the Governance Hot 100, and this year she made it to the power list of the 100 most influential Black people in the UK 2021. So we're really delighted that this evening Stephanie is going to be speaking to us about her background, her journey through her career to date, and her presidential priorities for her term of office. She's also very kindly agreed to take questions. So if there is anything you would like to ask Stephanie, please do take this opportunity. You can do so by popping your questions at any point into the Q&A function that appears at the bottom of your screen. And I will pick those up and put them to Stephanie on your behalf a little bit later. So, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to hand over to the President of the Law Society of England and Wales, Stephanie Boyce. Stephanie, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lyndon. So good evening, everyone. As Lyndon said, I'm Stephanie Boyce, the President of the Law Society of England and Wales, the independent professional body for over 200,000 solicitors across England and Wales. So it is an absolute pleasure to be with you here this evening, albeit virtually. So one of the best parts of my role is meeting and speaking to those entering or thinking of entering the profession and seeing what a bright future the profession has with so many talented and determined entrants and prospective entrants keen to join. So the legal profession has always been adaptable and capable of responding to changing circumstances with new challenges. We always find ways to innovate and ensure we continue to provide the highest quality services to our clients. And many of you here will soon be entering the profession, undertaking training, and then be in the early stages of your careers, and will be faced with unprecedented challenges, unlike those faced by anyone before. Indeed, you have already been experiencing these with the need to adapt the way in which you are studying, such as having to study remotely due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The resilience that you have shown already in being able to adapt will serve you well in your future careers. And although the challenges are significant, you will play an important part in shaping what the profession and the provision of legal services will look like in the years to come. And the Law Society is here to support you at every stage of your career. Some of you may know a little about the Law Society and the role we play already. The Law Society is the independent body that represents solicitors in England and Wales. And our purpose is to be the voice of solicitors, to drive excellence in the profession and to safeguard the rule of law. And we do this by influencing for impact, speaking out for justice and on legal issues, and by driving professional excellence, helping solicitors to develop their expertise in their businesses, whether they work in firms, in-house, or for themselves. And this includes working to ensure that the best talent can join the profession, irrespective of their background, and supporting equality, diversity, and inclusion and social mobility in the solicitor profession. So I took up my role as an office holder of the Law Society of England and Wales in July 2019 and became president earlier this year. And in doing so, I am the first person of colour to become president of the Law Society. And I stand as living testament to the diversity, dynamism, and growing social opportunity in the legal profession. In 1985, my family relocated to the United States of America. And even though I lived there for the next 6 years, I always knew I would return to the United Kingdom to study law. So in 1991, the day after finishing high school, I returned to the UK and so began my legal career. But I stumbled upon my first barrier upon discovering my US qualifications would not be recognised in the UK. However, thanks to the access to qualification route, I was able to enter London Guildhall University in 1996, where I graduated with an LLB honours in politics. After that, I progressed to the legal practice course at the College of Law in Guildford. But securing a training contract was not an easy task. However, thanks to the steadfast encouragement of my father, I secured a placement with a local firm in the town that I lived. I qualified in 2002 and joined my first in-house team a few years later. In 2010, I completed a master's degree in public law and global governance at King's College, University of London. Since qualifying in 2002, almost all of my career has been spent in-house, an increasingly common career choice for many solicitors. And my work focused on corporate governance, regulatory frameworks, and professional regulation. I always had a desire to represent the profession I had fought so hard to become a part of. And so I threw myself into the Law Society. I joined the council as a representative of the Women Lawyers Division before going on to chair the Strategic Litigation Group and join the Society's board. I had set my sights on the presidency, but I was not initially successful. Drawing on the experiences I had gained throughout my career, I resolved to keep trying, and on my fourth attempt, I was elected to become the 177th president of the Law Society, the 6th female president and the first Black office holder and the first person of colour. So the presidency is a great honour, but more importantly, it is a tool to achieve change, a platform to bring about progress in the profession. And while we have come some way in pursuit of a diverse and inclusive legal sector, there is a lot more to be done if we are to achieve what we are aiming for, a legal profession that reflects the society it is seeking to serve. And this is one of my central priorities for my presidency. And this is not just a moral necessity, just as our legal system's international reputation and the reputation of those that practice within it rest in part on ensuring universal access to justice within the UK. It also rests on ensuring that the legal profession is representative. We cannot claim that our legal system is the best it can be when we know that many talented people from non-traditional backgrounds are unable to join or advance within the profession. And there is no one button to press marked "make solicitors, barristers, judges and arbitrators, lawyers diverse." This is a complex issue with many factors, but the first step is identifying root causes and looking to counter them. That is why we at the Law Society are trying to do regarding solicitors. So with the pandemic having exacerbated inequalities across the sector, lawyers with disabilities, women, LGBTQ+, and Black, Asian and minority ethnic lawyers need the support of their Law Society more than ever. And that is why I have spent my time as president challenging harmful and reductive attitudes on panels, speeches, and articles, as well as through resources we provide. Attitudes like the belief that flexible working is somehow lesser than presenteeism, that blind allocation is unnecessary, that this whole diversity thing will just sort itself out and doesn't need real commitment and effort from everyone. It is still my mission, my ambition to leave the profession more diverse and inclusive than the one I entered. And I'm clear that this must be a shared ambition, with each and every one of us playing our part. We solicitors need to reflect the society we serve. So beyond increasing diversity and inclusion, one of my other priorities as president is protecting access to justice for all in our society. I have often said that legal rights mean absolutely nothing if you don't know when those rights are being taken away, or indeed you don't even know how to enforce those rights. And this means that we need to make the case for investment in the justice system, in the courts, and crucially in legal aid, to ensure that no one is excluded unfairly from the promise of justice. And we await with bated breath the Ministry of Justice's reviews of criminal legal aid, the sustainability of civil legal aid, and the legal aid means tests, as we know the impact these will have in our profession, have on those in our profession, who deliver advice and representation to those who would otherwise have none. And we are doing everything we can to help the government make the right choice. Written submissions, meetings, engagement with key decision makers and politicians. And we must not forget technology, which has been a lifeline to the justice system in the pandemic. And we are playing our part in ensuring the law tech boom does not encroach on the inviolable tenets of justice in our jurisdiction through our law tech and ethics principles. And these were produced in consultation with the profession, and we are eager to see how they are used in the wild. So when we talk of access to justice and of law tech and the principles governing it, we are concerned with the effect on those who encounter the justice system, the people who live and work in England and Wales. But we at the Law Society do not forget our duty to the profession that serves them, guiding them through the often opaque legal world that we are so used to. Practitioners need support as their role changes, and as the world changes around them, all the while ensuring the rule of law stays central. And we have provided this support throughout the pandemic, giving up-to-the-minute guidance on coronavirus and lockdown measures, providing our services remotely, and helping the profession adapt. In this way, we hope to relieve some of the pressure on the profession. And speaking to solicitors across the country, I've been impressed with the myriad of initiatives that have emerged in firms and in-house teams to address these vital needs, from the Be Kind initiative of the Conveyancing Foundation to new books on managing vicarious trauma in the legal profession, and staff-led peer groups where people can share difficult personal moments that they are going through. So we celebrate and support these initiatives. We have complemented these by continuing to support Law Care, one of my presidential nominated charities, working with firms and in-house teams and setting up our own virtual wellbeing and mental health hub for members, with career resources and guidance on how to work remotely. So good mental health and wellbeing must be valued and encouraged, and where environments do not facilitate this, change must be realised. And now a shameless plug for what I believe is a truly remarkable and rewarding profession. As you begin your career, and if law is the path you choose, I and the Law Society want you all to succeed, no matter where you have come from, and will do everything we can to support you in achieving your goals. With many chances to learn new skills and open different doors, you are well placed to ride the waves of change in the coming years and become the face of the future solicitor profession. The Law Society is here to help you navigate the journeys ahead. It is our aim to offer you, to assist you in maximising your career prospects in whichever path of the law you choose. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's fascinating to hear about the route that you took to get to where you are now, and also the key issues that you're leading on behalf of the profession. Just a reminder to those viewing remotely, do add your questions into the Q&A function, and we'll pick those up. We've got, Stephanie's kindly given us a good amount of time to be able to put questions to her. We have a few questions already, but as is the host prerogative, I'm going to jump in with my own first, if that's okay, Stephanie. I had no idea that you did not get elected the first time that you put yourself forward to be an office holder on behalf of the Law Society. I think that very often we don't speak about the things that don't go right for us. It's really easy to look at social media and to see everyone's successes and all the things that they've managed to achieve, and not necessarily see what's gone into that. And I just wondered, two things. How did you find that experience of having to put yourself forward so many times? Did you always know you were going to keep going until you got there? And what did you learn from the experience of having to do that 4 times before you got there?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Linda, for that question. Yeah, it took me 4 attempts before I was successfully elected as Deputy Vice President. And of course, once you're elected as Deputy Vice President from your cohort of council members, as I was, you then are on an automatic trajectory to become president, as I did earlier this year. So yes, I would have kept going. I would have kept going a 5th, a 6th, a 7th time, if nothing else, just to irritate everyone. But also because I knew, for me, I knew that I was I just had as much to offer, just as qualified, able, capable as anybody who had held the post before. And I wanted to be part of the change that I envisage for the profession and indeed for this law society. And so that's what drove me. And I hope that I have been part of that change that I absolutely want to see. So what have I learned? Well, I've learned resilience, I've learned determination, or more of, because even my pathway to become a solicitor, I had to be, resilient and determined to get to where I've got to. But, I don't see, and you're quite right, we don't talk about, I don't use the word failures because for me it has a negative connotation to it. But we don't talk about our lack of successes. And when I became Deputy Vice President, I was asked that very question very early on. Why do you tell your story that it took you 4 attempts? And the person who was interviewing said exactly that, because we don't talk about we only talk about our successes. And I said, because it's important that people recognise that I wasn't an overnight success, because if I was, it was the longest night ever. But equally, that there is something special in one's ability to get knocked down and to pick yourself up. And what it taught me was, the 3 previous attempts gave me the opportunity to refine, to hone, to really develop my offering, get to know my brief, if you like. Not that I knew it before, but I also had to win the hearts and minds of council. We kind of operated on a basis before, kind of who you knew, how much time you had done on council. And of course, I hadn't come from that traditional background. Who could I bring with me? So 4 attempts later, here I am. And who could I bring with me? I'd like to think that, I said I would take the Law Society to parts it's never been. And I'd be visible. And I hope that I have done exactly that on social media, and feel free to tag me in or connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. But it's absolutely about being visible, because if we can see it, we can believe it. And I did an admission ceremony earlier today, and so many people who said, you know, how proud they were, and what a statement, you know, just me being there in this space of being visible.
Absolutely. Well, we're all very grateful that you stuck with it. So thank you. We've got some great questions coming in, and I'm going to pick one from TJ. What made you do a law degree?
Well, what made me do a law degree is because I needed to do a law degree to qualify as a solicitor. So, I mean, obviously the rules have changed. You know, the rules have changed now, but you know, and I didn't want to do another degree other than a law degree. But you know, from a young age, I always wanted to, from as early as I can remember, but 7 years of age, I wanted to pursue a career. I wanted to be a lawyer, and for me, it didn't make sense going, because obviously I came from a low socioeconomic background. Finances were an issue, so I had to take the quickest route, rather than, you know, do a non-law degree, then do a conversion course, and do it that way. So I went straight for a law degree, but I did it with politics. So I've got a law degree with politics, and who knows, maybe that was an indication of perhaps the future. But and there are elements of this role. While the Law Society is politically neutral, you know, we do meet with governments, as I said, meet with governments, you know, politicians, you know, to talk about some of the legislation, some of our asks, some of our lobbying work, you know, around lots of things such as criminal legal aid, the justice system, and so forth. So perhaps what I learned at undergraduate level is coming in handy.
Thank you. A question from Chelsea next. Do you feel like the legal field or the legal sector rejects change intentionally or otherwise? She says it seems like the legal sector has perhaps pushed against using technology in the field until it was forced, perhaps due to the pandemic. So what are your views on that, and how do you think that junior lawyers and law students can push for change in the field, and should they be doing that?
Well, I mean, you know, firstly, quite right. It's said that the pandemic did in 48 hours what perhaps would have taken the legal profession 10 years to do, and that is embrace technology. You know, but not just the legal profession. You know, we've all seen how technology has transformed the way that we have worked and lived in the last 19, 20 months. You know, it's been a lifeline for some, if not many of us. You know, and in fact, you know, we've seen the way that technology has changed all of our lives, even before the pandemic. You know, my little nephew, you know, I mean, he might as well glue his phone to his hand because he never puts it down. You know, you know, but, you know, I think the bottom line is people struggle with change. And as I said, you know, we've been in unprecedented, challenging times over the last 20 months, forced on us in terms of the pandemic. Law tech, I think that the issue with law tech is, which is where the Law Society comes in with our guidance and resources and our ethical principles, is to provide that guidance, that trust around, because there's so many different products out there. People are also concerned about cost, the cost of embracing that technology. People are also concerned about, you know, cybersecurity, but also concerned about the skills that are necessary to be able to utilize that technology. So put all those factors together. Absolutely, people, you know, don't necessarily like change. I don't think the legal sector is dissimilar to, you know, to other areas. But of course, you know, technology is here for at least now, is here to stay. You know, we've heard issues of where firms are offering, you know, training seats in, and in fact we heard about this before COVID. But, you know, of technology, they're recruiting from, you know, startup companies IT companies, because they want the innovation, those who can readily embrace technology. So absolutely, we are going, but there is a nervousness as to whether or not technology is going to mean less jobs. And of course, it is not suggested, that technology is going to see less jobs. What it means is that we're going to have to work differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And then the next question will pick up on a different one of your presidential priorities. Mary's asked, with entry to the legal profession being diverse, how do you envisage the Law Society helping to increase the diversity of women and ethnic minorities in rising to senior positions within the legal profession?
Absolutely. So the Law Society published its a report, well, it surveyed members, and published a report in December 2020 called Race for Inclusion, the experiences of Black, Asian, minority ethnic solicitors in the profession. And there were some stark findings that came out of that report. And seemingly the Bar Council published their own report on Friday. And if you bear with, I will, because I can't remember what it's called. But, so it was the Bar Council's Race Summit. Well, maybe it was just the Race Summit. But equally, the findings from the Bar Council's paper, research paper, and the findings from our paper, more or less the same. That, so for us, 52% of practicing female practicing solicitors are female, but yet only 31% of partners in private practice. Social mobility, 23% of partners were privately educated, as opposed to 7% of the working age population. 17.5% are from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background, but only 8% are partners in 50 or more partner firms. And that figure has only risen by 1% since 2014. So what the Law Society is doing, and what that report said, is, quite fundamentally that, it absolutely cemented the notion that at entry level, as I think Mary said, that we are diverse. But as you move through, and it's not just the solicitor profession, the Bar Council's paper, the evidence is there, Silex, the evidence is there, and the judiciary, the evidence is there, is that as you move up into senior positions, diversity drops off, and that is across all of the protected characteristics. So what we are continuing to do through our Achieving Change Together roundtables, or ACT, is to work together with the regulators, the legal bodies, to ensure that there is a legacy of change. So we've done that through roundtables, where we gathered heard from members. We continue to work very closely with the other members, regulators, to ensure that actually it's not just talk for the sake of talking, but as I say, ACT being the acronym, Achieving Change Together, that we are actually doing something about it. So to have this platform as president and to be visible in this space provides a remarkable opportunity to continue these discussions. The Law Society has its Diversity Access Scheme, which fully funds those aspiring solicitors wishing to pursue a career in law, with a period of work experience, mentoring, sponsorship, and will pay for the legal, or what was the legal practice course, what is the solicitor's qualifying exam. We have our social mobility ambassadors who go out continuously and speak about their experience and their work. And we run a number of programs around, aspiring solicitors who want to become judges from a diverse background, and how we can help them with interview techniques and application fill-in forms. But those are some of the things, and we work with a whole host of other partners in terms of, lots of firms have come out and set targets. Lots have got different initiatives, committees. There's lots going on in this space. So the hope is, as I say, that it must be a shared ambition, that collectively and together, that we will ensure that there is change, and that this profession, the legal profession, reflects the community it is seeking to serve.
Thank you. And are you optimistic about the future?
Absolutely. I'm very optimistic. I mean, the fact is, when I think about the 4 attempts, to get to this space, when people told me it would never happen, to see an ethnic minority become president of the Law Society. And they said never in their lifetime. Go home and rest, Stephanie. You're embarrassing yourself, and everything else that they told me. And along the way, when people told me, you don't look like a solicitor, you don't sound like a solicitor, the solicitor profession is not for you, all of those things. But as I say, determination, skills, ability, aptitude, those must be the defining factors, nothing else. And so, yes, I'm very optimistic about what the future holds. And I look forward to seeing more Stephanie Boyces and Stephen Boyces and beyond occupying this space.
Hear, hear. Thank you. We had some questions emailed in actually prior to the event, and I think that one of those leads on from what you were just saying, came from Nadira, who asks, as the first Black president of the Law Society of England and Wales, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you overcome that feeling?
I took a deep breath. So I don't know if people caught my recent interview with Channel 4 News, where I was asked that very question. Good interview. Take a look. If you Google it, it'll come up. But, one of the recent times I experienced imposter syndrome was when I got to share a stage recently with former US Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, or HRC as I fondly like to call her. And, as comfort, I had my iPad with, my script on it. And something just said to me, you don't need it, put it down. You can do this without it. So that was where, for me, those voices going around and imposter syndrome coming, and wanting to take root. But as I say, it does come and visit sometimes, but it's important you recognize that. And when you recognize it, you pack them and send them on their way, send it on its way, because it can, imposter syndrome can paralyze you, and mean you don't bring out the best in you. You don't get the best of yourself. So when it happens, recognize it, but let it go.
Thank you. And I guess following on from that, we have a question from Oluwabisola, who asked, what's the biggest lessons from your journey so far that you've taken into your role as president? So what have you learned from the path that got you here that you're putting to use this year? I guess that what you've just spoken about is one example of a lesson hard learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So that every door is open if you push, that you persevere until something happens. I do not believe that, first of all, I was brought up in a household where I was told to focus on the content of my character, not the color of my skin. And I absolutely believe that. As I said earlier, that, I'm just as qualified, I'm just as able, capable as anyone else. And I'm not going to allow others to define me, as lots have tried. It's important that you write your own story, you run your own race. And just because somebody, didn't do it, or, it didn't work out for that person, it's not to suggest that it won't work out for you. You've got to be in it to win it. And I absolutely believe that, because this role, this success did not come to me. It didn't come to me sat at home waiting for it to happen. I had to go out and work for it.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to a slightly different topic now. So Nathan has asked whether you think that the current training route to become a solicitor, the high costs that can be associated with that, are the best way to encourage talent from those who might not come from backgrounds with high economic status. With that in mind, do you welcome the introduction of the Solicitor's Apprenticeship Scheme? And what are your thoughts on the SQE in terms of alleviating some of those issues?
Well, absolutely. So we are told, so the Solicitor's Apprenticeship Scheme is another route into the profession, but what's important is that it's being used, appropriately. So we have seen instances where, those who potentially are able to go to university and fully fund their route into the profession are going via the apprenticeship scheme, because they can earn whilst they learn and not be saddled with that debt. So firms, businesses, organisations just need to be alive to that, and what they are really utilising the apprenticeship scheme for. What is it that they're trying to achieve? Who is it that they are trying to bring into the profession? So absolutely. In terms of the SQE, we are told that the solicitors qualifying examination is set to remove those artificial barriers to qualification, because we know that there were more, academia produces more, and law schools produce more candidates than there was training contracts. So we're told it's going to remove those artificial barriers, that it's going to diversify the profession. The difficulty is, of course, is that we, the Law Society, have a real concern that students are going to be financially excluded from the profession, because there is no commitment from government at the moment, or any of the major funders, to fund the SQE. So at the moment, people have to fund it themselves. And I know there are some unique offerings and ways that people perhaps can circumvent that and get funding. But we are concerned that funding is not readily currently available. But we continue to lobby government to ask, that is one of our asks, that funding should be made available, so that, as I say, that individuals are not financially excluded from this profession.
Thank you. And it's really interesting to hear from you about all the work that the Law Society does lobbying on behalf of the profession, because I think when I first started my legal career, that wasn't an aspect of the Law Society's work that I was aware of. So it's really useful to be able to hear more about that as well. We've had a few questions that are quite similar, and they're asking what you think the most important trait is for a lawyer. So what do you think are the qualities, the characters, the traits that a good lawyer needs?
Well, I think one of the most important... Oh, are you still there?
I am, yes, I can hear you.
I think one of the most important traits is, first of all, is, reputation. The reputation, the reputation of, one of us, if one solicitor damages the reputation, it affects us all. So it's important that there is, that reputation is important to us as solicitors, at the beating heart of society, but also integrity. Integrity is something that, you either have it or you don't. It's not something you can have a little of. And of course, people will come to us because of, because we're with the high regard that we're held in the knowledge that people can tell us anything. And no one can force us, not government, not the police, nobody can force us to tell that information which we've been told. Except for a court order, of course, but to a certain extent. But, even doctors and priests don't have that luxury of not being able to divulge that information. But I also think, aside from reputation, aside from integrity, aside from that confidentiality, client relationship, there is, listening. You have to be able to listen. You have to be able, attention to detail is a good one, but you really have to be able to listen, because so much of our job is about listening and taking that information on board. And, we are dispute resolvers. People come to us because, they have an issue, and they look to us to give them advice. Not always the advice that they want to hear, but, advice. So yes, so those are some of the skills that I believe are integral to being a good solicitor.
Thank you. And of course, giving people advice that they might not want to hear is part of that independence and integrity in and of itself, isn't it? The next question is one from me, and it's we've got, I know, lots of aspiring solicitors watching this evening, lots of current and aspiring law students as well. How can and how should aspiring and new entrants to the profession engage with the Law Society?
Well, so there will, first of all, my suggestion is that the universities will have a local law society. Some regionally where you are will have local law societies that will take student membership. We have a junior lawyers division that represents some 70,000 members, solicitor members of our profession. And some branches of junior lawyers division have open membership to to students. So initially at the moment, the Law Society is for solicitors, qualified solicitors. But as I say, there are a number of our divisions committees where it is open to trainees and student members. Indeed, the Women Lawyers division, if I remember correctly, will take, for instance, student members. So there are aspects to it. So aspects that you can get involved in the Law Society. But my advice is get involved in get involved locally, and then seek to, as you navigate your journey, seek to become involved in the National Law Society.
Thank you. And I should pick up on that for University of Birmingham students that are watching this evening and say that you are members of our local law society, which is Birmingham Law School, Birmingham Law Society. The law school has paid your membership to that. So we'll recirculate details in the next newsletter about how you register if you want to find out more about their events and how to get involved, because that's a great way to engage, as Stephanie suggested, locally. I'm going to pick up on a different strand of your experience now, which is about working as an in-house solicitor. And Mary has a question around the increasing popularity of in-house positions. Do you see that as leading to a decline in the prevalence of positions with private practice law firms? And I'm going to add to that and say, what would you say are the advantages or opportunities that an in-house career can offer to a solicitor?
Well, absolutely. So in-house is the fastest growing area of the profession. Some 25% of our members come from in-house. I myself, as I said, went in-house in 2004, initially with the General Counsel of the Bar Council, working with a number of professional bodies, regulators, non-departmental government bodies, and so forth. I went in-house because I wanted flexibility. I could see a succession pipeline. So, there are a number of reasons why people go in-house. I mean, for instance, our statistics tell us that if you happen to be female and you come from a Black, Asian, minority, ethnic female background, you are more likely to go in-house. And as I say, a number of people have cited a number of reasons as to why they do so. There is, as I say, it's the fastest growing area of our profession. We are potentially seeing an increase. So for instance, where we didn't see businesses, organisations having in-house colleagues, lawyers before, we are now seeing that. Some of the biggest, organisations have some of the biggest legal departments, some 3,000, 4,000 in their legal departments, in-house. So absolutely a thriving area of the profession. But people go in-house for a number of reasons. Somebody said, as I said, I just did an admission ceremony. And somebody said they went in-house because they wanted, Monday to Friday hours. And, they wanted that balance, that work balance.
Great, thank you. But I'm really conscious of time, Stephanie, and your time as well. So we need to wrap up shortly, but I'm going to finish with a great question that's come in from Nakia, who has asked, what are 3 aspects of your role or job that may change in 5 to 10 years from now? I'm not sure whether Nakia is asking about your practice as a solicitor or about your role with the Law Society. So perhaps you'd be kind enough to give us a view on each. So what aspects of your roles are likely to change in the next 5 to 10 years, and how?
So before I became an office holder, I had and still do actually, have my own company in governance. So governance is my background. I'm a chartered company secretary with the Chartered Governance Institute now. So what's going to change? So basically I'd go into organizations, businesses, and do governance reviews, transformational change and so forth. I do think there's going to be an emphasis on, and there has been an emphasis, especially as we've seen in the last week or so, around standards, because that's part of governance as well. But, I think there is going to be a push towards greater governance. But of course, I would say that because, perhaps, employing for business or something like that. But in terms of my presidential role, climate change. Notoriously, the president spent most of their time, flying around the world. That has not been able to happen because of the pandemic, but also there's increased pressure to not do that because of climate change. So I think that's going to be one of the results that we will see. And it will be interesting because there are so many jurisdictions that we want to get involved in since Brexit, that will enable market access for our legal colleagues abroad. But much of that, there are still cultures around the world where those discussions are expected to be had in person, rather than via computers and so forth. What's the other aspect that's going to change? As I say, I think the way that we deliver our work, the way we engage with clients, the way we deliver our work is going to change. And most of that is going to be down to technology. And I think increasingly we will see that technology becoming cheaper. If we think about at the start of the pandemic, about the limitation of Teams and Zoom, and all the great things that it can do now. But of course, the issue is if you don't have connectivity, if you don't have the resources to afford the hardware, the infrastructure, or you don't have the skills in order to deploy, to use those, to use any of those, then it remains an issue.
Stephanie, thank you so much. We've still got questions pouring in, but you've been extremely generous with your time and also with sharing your experiences. Our head of school, Professor Lisa Webley, has sent a message to say thank you very much for the fabulous talk, inspiring, informative and engaging. It would have made a huge impact on our diverse student body and staff community. And she's quite right, representation matters and transparency matters. You have been really open and inspiring in sharing your experiences. I think so often we let our imposter syndrome get the better of us, and it is refreshing and inspiring to hear from someone who admits to having that, but grits their teeth and gets on with it anyway. I can think of no better advocate for our profession. I'm extremely proud that you are the president of my Law Society. Here's to many more Stephanie Boyces in the future. Thank you very much, Stephanie, and all the best for the remainder of your term and all that lies beyond that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.